We've all heard the saying, go big or go home. Well, what about go big and use at home? So today we're going to work on learning how to make some large pumpkins that are great for an outdoor entryway, big porch, or even your lawn. And we've got two versions going. The first is what I'm calling the open pumpkin, which has this open form on the inside and uses about half the goods of the larger one. This one you can sit your own lantern inside. We're also going to learn how you can light it electrically and some options there. And then we go to the truly gigantic pumpkin, which is the closed pumpkin, which has more ribs around the outside, and the fact that it's even a little bit larger, and you can literally hide things inside it as well, and to create different looks. So both are great for your home, and we're going to learn how to make those at this point. Now, the one that I'm going to really feature on is the open pumpkin. Just to keep the video a little shorter, you're using the same techniques, just a little more of it to make the large pumpkin. Your supplies for the open pumpkin: you're going to have one of the work wreaths, and that is going to be made just like you would a traditional wreath, laying flat. Now what that does is it gives you a good flat firm surface for your pumpkin to rest on, rather than doing just a ball that you've got to try and bend and it always rocks one way or the other or wants to roll. In addition to that, we have a new frame this year. This is made specifically for MailBox Huggie forms, because of course you can bend it around and make it fit your mailbox exactly. But it's also great to construct other items with. You're going to need 4 of these for your open pumpkin. Then we're going to need some type of branch to use for the stem. Here I'm using a very large branch that I'm going to bend in two to use for that. And you need some type of tie material. I've got a moss covered wire here, and you can see that I've used a bark covered wire in the one that I already have made. Now, if you're going to make the large pumpkin, we'll run the supply list for that at the moment. It's going to take 2 of the work wreaths. You're going to have the one used as the base, just like you do this one, and the second one you're going to use in the top, and it's going to be upside down. So you're going to need to pull all of your ties through to the back side of it. Now, the reason I'm doing that is both to make the pumpkin larger, but it also gives you that indented shape that you get with a real pumpkin and helps get your form there. For the larger one, you're going to use 8 of these frames so that you can go all the way around and get a solid form, whereas your open one, we're using 4. The amount of mesh that it takes for the open pumpkin, it takes 4 of the 21-inch rolls. The large pumpkin with the closed sides uses 7 rolls. Of the green 10-inch that you need for your leaf forms, you're going to use 1 roll for the open, and for the larger pumpkin it takes 2 rolls. Now, let's begin making. First off, we're going to do the wreath, and we're going to do these in individual sections just because it's easier for you to work on, and then we'll put them together. So, this uses the same rules as your basic wreath form. We'll start with the outside edge and just start tying in. So this is the way you would make your basic wreath for whatever you were doing. If you're doing a mesh wreath, you're going to do your outside row and let those puff up. Of course, I've already pre-shaped my wreath out, got all those ties standing out, so it's easy for me to just move around the piece and catch my ties and get done quickly. The wreath form itself takes 1 full roll, and that's whether you're using it for the pumpkin or whether you're using it for just your more traditional wreath form. course, this moves quickly around. Of course, for my pumpkins today, I'm using the traditional color, just the orange mesh with the metallic thread running through it. You could do other colors, but I think for the large one, I would stick with tradition, because that's what people are used to seeing the most. Also, by using the plastic mesh, any light that you use will shine through it. I've got the outside row done, and I just slant over to the inside row and continue on around. Now, this project, because it is a larger project, once you get all of your individual pieces done, it's good to have a friend or family member help you construct it. It is a large piece, and with it all spread out on the floor, which is the best place to do it because of the amount of space it takes up, it's just a little easier, at least until you get used to it, to have somebody else there helping you hold things. So instead, if you see me struggle a bit when we're putting it together, it's because I'm doing it on my own. But it will be easier if you have somebody else, at least that you can work with and not argue, to give you a little assistance. Of course, in that case, then you may have to make two, one for yourself and one for them. But that's okay too. We're almost finished here. So we've got a little bit left, which is normal when you're doing the wreath. You want to go in and just kind of fill in some of the thinner spots. It just gives you a little more fullness. So just kind of weave that back and forth. Until you've used up the rest of the roll. You can see how that addition just gives you a little more depth. Okay, the very last tie and our base wreath is complete. Now then, let's work with our frame. When working with the frame, all you've got to do is the same way as you do the wreath. You've got 2 rows, so we're just going to start at the one end, nearest you, gathering the fabric in with those same puffs. And we go up the one side and down the other. Okay, we're to the end. So I'm just going to turn everything around. Gather that in and let it just loop around so that you've got a finished end. And then continue down this side. Letting that puff out and fill in. And just give me a nice wide band of textured mesh. Okay, now I've reached the last tie on this side. But rather than cut it off right there, I'm again going to turn it back to my original position. And tie back in that original tie, the very first one. And that makes my loops look the same, my ends look the same. And then I can trim my mesh off. All right, now we'll get that out of the way. So now I have my base, and I have 4 of these made. So I'm ready to start attaching. The base is going to sit just like this, just like it's finished. The sides we're going to start attaching. You're going to need to turn those upside down because as we put it together, you want to fold it up where the correct side is to the outside of the piece. Now there are a couple of things you can use to attach. You can tie together with chenille stems, bent in half, or you can use zip ties. Either way, whatever works for you. For this project, I think I will use the chenille stems just because they're softer on the hands and I can bend that down and not have to cut. But you can use either one, they're both very functional. Now, first off, I'm going to start with my first frame and I'm just going to lay it down here. Hopefully you can see, and I'm going to tie to each side of the frame, tie that tightly to the outside frame of my wreath. And I'm going to do that on both sides, as I said. That helps give it a little more strength, steady it up. Okay, so that's the first one. And as you can see, once this is all laid out flat, it does take up quite a lot of space. So I would recommend, if you've got enough floor space going, to do this down on the floor. Go straight across from your previous piece and tie that off to your wreath on the other side. I always go straight across first, that way I've got my angles correct, and then I can work from there. It's always easier to split angles using a straight line going across than it is to just kind of guess if you're a quarter of the way around or not. You get to the last one and you're slightly off. Of course, Most of my friends and associates say I'm slightly off anyway. Attach the third one at a right angle to the others. Tie it the very same way. Then you're ready for the last one. Got that pulled in there tight. Okay, at this stage, this is what you want it to look like. You want your 4 pieces spread out flat, X-form, your base wreath to be sitting there. Now, next decision is, do you want to leave it like I have the one sample, unlit with a lantern inside, or do you want to light it? If you're wanting to light them, the open one, like this, should take approximately 1 string of 100 strand lights in order to use it. Otherwise, the larger closed pumpkin takes a 200 string or 200 light string. It's very easy to do. I'll reach over here and just show you how you can go about that. Now for that, I use the zip ties because it really is the fastest way. I would want to place my first one in and run the full length all the way up to determine where that's going to be. Then I'm going to zip tie the first one in. Then I'll pull my string back down. That way I can get, you're going to have a doubled string of lights, so there's plenty of lights going there. And then you're going to zip tie to this frame as you go along. Bring a strand over, run up and down each one until you've got that done and you're ready to go, and put the rest of it together. It's very fast. It's really not all that difficult to replace the lights if they go out. You can just clip those zip ties on the old, put the new in. You just have to work inside it a little more. But that's how you would go about easily lighting the piece. Now, putting it together. Take one of the pieces and start to just take the flat of your hand and bend this piece over until you've got a curve going. Curve the top down just a bit, because think of how the pumpkin forms almost a C if you were looking at it, and or a reverse C for the other side. Okay, for the other one, do the same thing. Again, working straight across from each other. And then you want to pull those frames together. Don't worry if your shape is not perfect yet. And then tie the ends of those two together. Again, tie both sides, use 2 chenille stems just to give it a little more added strength, because one will slide around. Now if this were the larger pumpkin, I would be tying these pieces to the sides of the second wreath, which was flipped upside down. That would give me additional space. Okay, now then, going to work this side in, and I'm going to do the same thing using the flat of my hand to start shaping that piece and bring it up and tie it in to the other two. Challenging part, of course, is reaching your frame underneath your mesh because the mesh starts pushing against each other. But that gives you fullness, body, and added strength. This, of course, is where it's helpful to have someone holding for you as you tie. Got one in there. I'll do my second one. Okay, that's got 3 of our 4 sides. Let me see, I need a few more chenille stems. Okay, we're going to bring the 4th side up and turn this so that you can see. We'll bring that 4th side up now and start shaping it. Tie it into our frames that are already there. Last tie. All right, now then, we've got our form sitting here. It's still a little roundish looking on top. That's why I said don't worry if your shape is not quite right yet. Okay, just push down. Use the flat of your hand under that frame. Bend each one a little bit more. Now you start to see this center sink down and you got more of that top arch that you want. Okay, now then, leaves. We're going to use our 10-inch green mesh. Sit this over a little so you can see. And just cut a pretty good length. And you're going to gather it in the center. Now in this case, with this one I've decided I'm just going to show you how things can look different. I'm using this mossed wire, but you can use the barked wire. You can use, almost anything that you want. Okay, and I'm going to cut a pretty good length of that. I'm going to gather in the middle. I'm going to tie that off, and then I'm just going to reach down inside the piece and tie it to the frame. Now I'm not worrying about going directly into the center because my branch is going to glue into there. Instead I'm just going into one of the frame cross pieces that's near it. I'm going to twist and tie that off. Now, this end that's sticking out, I'm just going to take a couple of fingers and wrap around and make a curl. Because, vines have those little gripper, curly jobs that grab onto things to help them creep along the ground or creep upward. See, I'm going going to cut 4 more pieces. Or actually 3 more pieces. I'm going to use 4 total. And I'll set that aside. Do your length of mesh. Gather in the center. And let's go to the other side and tie that in the same way. And again, make our curls. And this just adds a little more visual interest. Okay, let those curl over. Now my other 2 I'm going to do double thickness. And I'm going to do them a little longer because you of course have leaves that are larger and some leaves that are smaller. I'm going to gather the first one, and I'm going to gather the second one in the middle, and I'm just going to kind of cross those over each other, like so. And then take the moss wire again and tie both of those together. This just gives me a double thickness. And then I'm going to tie that in on this side. Okay, and just let those curls drape. I'll do the same thing on the other side. And that will have the leaves completed. Okay, gather up the first one. Gather up the second one, and if you should want a little more height, flip it over so those curls go up instead of down, so you've got one up and one down. Tie that on. Turn it so that I can get to it. There's a frame. Okay, make my curls. That's got our leaves on. And now the final step is to add your stem. Now I've got this large branch. You can use a latex vine, you can use a real branch, whatever you want. In this case, I'm just going to bend this in half. I'm not even going to cut it. I'm going to form a little arch. And I'm going to dip in my hot glue. Again, you can use the glue gun. And once I've got a good dose there, I'm just going to push that down into that center. and hold it and let it cool and adhere well, and my piece is finished. And so this then is your open pumpkin. Now you can finish off the inside display by doing like I've done with the one down here, placing a lantern inside it with a battery operated candle. Don't use a real candle. This is plastic mesh. Should the heat build up, it will burst into flame. So you don't want that happening. So always use a battery operated candle. Of course, if you have decided to do the electric lighting on the inside with the zip ties like I've shown you, you can have that. You could do one of the Halloween figures, a metal figure from the tree. You know, any number of things that you can display in the center that people can see throughout this piece. And so, again, a wonderful yard ornament. Just use some heavy stiff wire to form some U's to stake it down into the yard if there's wind hitting. That way your neighbors won't want to end up with a wonderful Halloween surprise instead of it being in your own home. You can get all of these supplies at Trees and Trends. So go in, shop around, have fun, and enjoy your holidays.